You check in, expecting a bed, a shower, a city map on the desk. You do not expect evidence that someone has already been inside your room. Yet, that is exactly what 4 different travelers and 1 hotel worker found in the dark pockets of hotel life. Little signs that something was wrong, noises that should not be there, and moments when the thin barrier between safety and exposure felt paper thin. These are 4 true accounts from the dark side of hotels. I'm going to tell them as they were told to me, close, sensory, and unresolved. Listen and keep your guard up the next time you pull a key from the slot. The first guest checked in a small Pennsylvania city on an ordinary business night. It was the kind of place where the lobby was quiet at 10, the elevator chimed soft and slow, and the carpet in the hallway had that faint scent hotels get, cleaning solvent and something floral that tries to be inviting. He took the key, rode to the 3rd floor, unlocked his door, and pushed inside, tired enough to collapse onto the mattress. The room looked fine at first glance. Lamp on, TV remote in place, the chair by the window askew as if someone had sat there only briefly. He dropped his bag, showered, turned out the light. It was after midnight when he heard sliding paper against the bottom of the door. At first he thought it was a cleaning cart. Then silence. A minute later, another soft scrape. He bent down and peered through the peephole. Nothing. He opened the door and found a narrow strip of paper folded and tucked against the hall side of the doorframe. On it, in a blocky handwriting, were 4 words, "I've been watching you." He felt a cold, shallow prickle at the base of his skull. He texted a friend, made a nervous joke, and shoved the note back beneath the door so it wouldn't blow away. The next morning he laughed it off to himself, but that night, exhausted from travel, he returned early. The lobby light was dim. The night clerk barely lifted his head. He unlocked his room and froze. Another note sat waiting, folded the same way, slid under the door as if placed there by a hand that knew exactly where the gap was. His stomach dropped. He checked the bathroom, the closet. His clothes were where he'd left them, but the parallel sense of violation hovered like a smell. He called down. The desk said they would look into it, but the voice carried the practiced distance of people used to odd complaints. He spent that night tense, a lamp burning low, eyes fixed on the door. Sometime near dawn, a 3rd note slid in, no more than a whisper of paper. "I'm inside." He didn't wait. He grabbed his bag, ran without shoes, unlocked the chain, and pushed the door open with his shoulder, expecting someone to step out. The hallway was empty. Carpet, silence, the glow of an emergency exit sign 2 doors down. He sprinted to the lobby. The clerk looked at him as if he'd seen this kind of reaction before and offered, softly, that the building had old windows and sometimes people could get inside through one if it was loose. He didn't let him finish. Later, when he demanded the manager review security footage, the clerk came back with a static, official tone. The camera angles were limited. There was a gap on the 3rd floor for a few hours that night. The guest insisted on seeing the window in his room. He climbed up to the sill and found the latch half broken. It didn't look like a forced entry so much as a mechanism worn and left unfastened. Someone could have opened it from outside. He felt the fabric of safety tear. He checked out immediately. He didn't wait for police because at that hour he wanted away from the building more than any report. He slept in the car in a parking lot until dawn, windows fogging, keys clutched in his hand like a talisman. In the weeks that followed, he avoided that chain of hotels entirely. Whenever he travels now, he says, he runs his hand along the window locks first. He sleeps with the light on. He always checks under the bed. If this one makes your skin crawl and you want more real hotel scares, hit like and subscribe. There are 3 more. The second story comes from a woman who booked a room late on a business trip to Virginia. She arrived weary, the highway lights a smear behind her, and the clerk was efficient in that way that says, "We see this every night." The room door opened to a space that didn't quite feel right. A blanket tossed on the armchair the wrong way, a towel in the shower that didn't match the washcloth she'd brought, and a faint scent like tobacco that she didn't smoke. She set her bag down and tried to rationalize it. Maybe a late checkout, maybe housekeeping missed a spot. At about 2 a.m., she woke to the sound of the doorknob turning. Not a violent shake, but a soft, testing twist, the kind of motion you make when you're checking a lock. Her heart hammered. She held her breath and listened. The knob turned again, slower this time, a scraping noise as if a key was being tried in the cylinder. She pulled the covers over her head and pretended to sleep, counting breaths until the motion stopped. When she finally forced herself to look, nothing had been disturbed, except for a slow, cold panic that spread like ice through her limbs. She called the front desk, and a sleepy voice answered. They promised to send someone to check the hallway. A knock came 10 minutes later. Housekeeping. A woman stood there, cart still in the corridor, eyes apologetic. "Sorry," she said, "we're supposed to be quieter." The guest watched the woman through the crack in the door as she moved down the hall, listening for the cart to roll away. The noise receded. Later that night, after trying in vain to sleep, she woke again to the unmistakable sound of someone rummaging in her bag beside the bed. She flung on the light and found a man bending over her tote, his hand halfway into the open pocket. He was large, the shape of him filling the doorway like a dark coat thrown up against light. She screamed. He clammed up, stepped back, and then, to her lasting disbelief, stepped out into the hall and walked away casually as if he had every right to be there. She insisted on seeing CCTV. The footage showed a man approaching her room around 1 in the morning, carrying nothing but his posture, and then, about an hour later, entering with a key that fit cleanly into the lock. The angle showed the figure walking as if he were staff. His shoulders were broad, the walk was not nervous. The manager's explanation was measured. Keys get stolen, keys get copied, sometimes ex-employees keep access. No accusation was made. The guest did not want to hear the logistics. She wanted safety. She left the room, bag clutched to her chest, and slept in her car in the hotel lot until dawn. The sense of being invaded refused to leave her, a residue that made every brush of her coat feel like someone else's hand. She changed travel plans, avoided chains in that region for months, and later installed a small portable door alarm to take with her. She does not recommend confronting anyone in a hotel corridor, she told me later, a reminder she had learned from what happened. How safe are hotel keys? That question hangs over the next tale. The third account comes from someone who was passing through New Jersey and chose a budget downtown property because it was late and cheap. They noticed small things right away. Towels mismatched, a closet that seemed to stick in one place until pushed, and the faint metallic smell of cleaning solutions. At night, when the building quieted, they kept hearing a soft dragging sound coming from the closet. The first time, they blew it off. The second time, they strained to hear a breathing that seemed too close for comfort. They told the front desk in the morning, and the clerk nodded like they'd heard similar complaints. "Old building," the clerk said. "Sometimes staff are in and out." But when they opened the closet that afternoon, the shelf had been shifted. Not ransacked, but arranged slightly differently than when they'd left. A shoe moved an inch. It was a small thing, but the idea of someone having been inside while they slept clung to them. That night, exhausted, they switched rooms. They requested an upper floor and a room with a view of the street. They thought changing would be enough. They settled in and tried to let the day's travel dry out of their bones. At about midnight, a sequence of sounds began that made their chest tighten. A slow thumping like a cart rolling in a hallway, a soft brushing at the base of the door, and then, unmistakably, breathing, low and deliberate, right outside the room. It was a measured exhale and inhale, the kind of breathing you hear when someone is standing still, waiting for some movement. They sat frozen, watching the door like a hawk. They called the front desk. The voice on the line was flat, then oddly hesitant. "We're aware," the clerk said finally. "We've had someone missing from the night shift. A housekeeper didn't show up. We're short-handed." The guest asked what that meant. The clerk's response was clinical. "We've reassigned duties." The implications settled heavy. Someone who usually worked the night had not been accounted for, and tasks were being shifted without explanation. The guest grabbed their bag and left. They watched the hallway as they passed. Housekeeping carts were out, but people moved too quickly, their faces turned away. At the exit, the night manager offered a conciliatory refund and a new booking at a partner hotel, but the guest could not accept. There was a sense of being used, property of turnover and procedures, and that feeling had teeth. They spent the night in their car again, windows cracked for breath, eyes fixed on the glow of street lamps. Afterwards, whenever they think of that stay, they imagine a person slipping into closets or standing in darkened doorways, between shifts and rooms, unseen but near. They wonder if someone has ever been hiding in a hotel, simply because they needed a place to be quiet, or because they moved through rooms without alarm. The doubt gnaws. Was it human? Was it something else? The record was incomplete. The answer, absent. The last account comes from someone who worked nights at a hotel during a summer season in 2023. Unlike the other witnesses, this one was on the inside, not a guest, but a person whose job it was to know the rhythms of the building and to fix what was broken. On a humid evening, they were finishing rounds at the pool, where a group of guests had been laughing and swimming earlier. Later, while they were alone, they heard the life preserver hit the deck. It wasn't a splash or a wind gust. The preserver had been hung by the ladder and dropped with a clear thunk, as if an invisible hand had pushed it off. The employee walked over, expecting a prank or a loose hook. Nothing explained it. The clip seemed fine. The concrete had that damp summer smell. Later, while doing a routine maintenance check on an unoccupied room, they noticed an odd chill. It was July, thick with heat in the corridors, and yet this room, 324 on the third floor, had a temperature that made their breath cloud. The air felt heavy, and the hairs on their forearms rose. They stepped into the bathroom, and the light in the hall flickered. They put a hand to the wall and felt an immediate drop, as if the whole corner had been dipped in cold. Then a sound, a dull thump, like something landing softly in the corner. They turned slowly and saw a figure. Not a shadow cast by light, but a weightless, vertical shape of absolute darkness that seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. It stood taller than the doorway, featureless, a dense absence in the room's far corner. They did not process it at length. Processing comes after, but their body obeyed a simpler command: run. They bolted from the room, slammed the door, and did not stop until they were in the safety of the staff break area. They told the night manager in shaky words, and the manager offered a standard explanation: drafts, backlighting, seasonal fatigue. The employee tried to laugh and accepted a shift reassignment that same week. They never went back to that wing alone at night. Unlike the other stories, where the danger could be explained as human trespass, this one carried an air of the inexplicable. The life preserver had not been arranged by any guest. The cold was localized, and the figure's blackness was not a person-shaped shadow, but an absence that did not belong to the logic of light. The employee still works in hospitality, but avoids late shifts when they can. They told me that they don't bring friends through the old corridor anymore, and that sometimes, when the hotel is quiet, they pause outside room 324 and choose the long way around. Across these 4 accounts there are shared threads, small clues that something is off: a slip of paper, a moved closet shelf, the scrape of a key, that swell into moments where privacy and trust are breached. The human explanations are plausible: keys copied, staff shortages, careless windows. But the unresolved things linger too. Gaps on CCTV, notes that escalate, a cold that has no mechanical source, a life preserver that drops with no wind. That ambivalence is part of why hotels nauseate us at their worst. They are transient places where strangers share walls, and the usual markers of community and accountability are thin. These stories also show how people respond when the normal systems fail them. Some fled the building without waiting for formal reports. Some demanded to see footage and were met with partial answers. Others simply packed and left in the middle of the night and slept in their cars, choosing immediate escape over process. It's worth noting that none of the witnesses encouraged confrontation. Their instinct was evasion, not heroism. They prioritized safety and distance, and that choice kept them out of harm's way. I won't tell you hotels are unsafe everywhere. That would be fear-mongering. But I will say this: hotels are designed to be anonymous by their nature. They invite strangers under the same roof. That anonymity can be convenient. It can also be exploited. When you combine occasional human malice, copied keys, inattentive staff, with the inexplicable, the result can be something that rattles people for years. So, what should you do without panicking? Trust your instincts. Check locks. Check windows. Slide the deadbolt and chain if you have them. Keep valuables in sight or on your person when possible. If something feels wrong, move. Ask for a new room, request a manager, or, if you must, sleep somewhere you can control access. These are small, sensible measures, not guarantees. They are about giving yourself options when the thin shield of hotel anonymity is breached. If you've stayed with me this far, please subscribe for more true horror stories from the margins of travel. And if something like this has happened to you, tell us in the comments below. Your experience could help someone else be more careful. We read everything. Hotels are liminal places, thresholds where people pass through, carrying their lives in suitcases, trusting front desks and locks to keep them private. Sometimes that trust holds, sometimes it doesn't. The notes under the door, the keys that fit, the breath at the base of the door, the cold that has no explanation, they all remind us that our safety in strange rooms often relies more on luck than certainty. Sleep with care, lock your door, and remember that the strange hum in an otherwise normal hotel might be nothing, or the first sign of something that will keep you awake for a long time.